control. If the sky is pink and white, if the ground is black and yellow, it's the same way you showed me.
Everyone's daily routine impacts our environment, from leaving the sink on for an extra 50 seconds to recycling an old water bottle. But are the people of this community aware of their day-to-day impacts? Philadelphia is the 6th most populated city, and yet has one of the worst cases of air pollution in the U.S. Delaware County releases over 4.5 million metric tons of greenhouse gases annually, with 41% of these emissions generated from commercial energy sources. These stats can be very concerning to the average citizen. Many citizens of this community are unaware of how much impact we truly have on the environment. So to help raise awareness, we spoke to Susanna Beckett and John Hawkins. Susanna is the founder and designer for Wild Iris Ecological Garden Design, former field director at Environmental Restoration and employee of Philadelphia's Park Department. John Hawkins is the assistant professor of Earth and Environmental Science at the University of Pennsylvania. Hawkins is a biochemist with a broad interest in the cycling of elements through the Earth system. Hawkins went to the University of Bristol and graduated with a PhD in biochemistry and an MSI in physical geography.
Well, I have a background in forest restoration. I worked for a nonprofit in Philadelphia for 7 years, helping restore, in particular, the Wissahickon. And I started getting asked by my neighbors if I would help with their gardens. So because I do forest restoration, I wasn't interested in pretty flowers and lilies from Asia. I wanted to do restoration in yards. And now it's my job. I started the business and it's been 2 years.
Sure, yeah, my name is John Hawkins. I'm an assistant professor here at the University of Pennsylvania in the Department of Earth and Environmental Science.
All right. I'm just going to jump right into it with our first question. What do you believe is the biggest threat to our climate?
So our biggest impact. Okay. So in terms of carbon emissions, our biggest impact on climate is things like fossil fuel burning is the big one. That can come in forms like power generation. It can be transport, also fossil fuel generation from things like agriculture as well, from farming of cattle, for example, ruminants burping and farting, methane. Biggest one of those is probably fossil fuel burning from power generation, followed by fossil fuel burning from transport and agriculture. And then the other big impact you have as an individual on the climate is probably transportation, how you get to work, but also how you decide to spend your vacations, and also if you have to commute a lot for work, if you have to fly a lot for work, then that has a big impact on your carbon footprint as an individual as well.
The overdevelopment of land, the loss of biodiversity, mainly due to development, but certainly due to waste and pollution.
What do you think the biggest problem is locally as well in Philadelphia?
Yeah, that's an interesting one in Philadelphia. Yeah, it's pretty all related to urbanization, transportation probably, people driving cars, urban heat island effect in Philadelphia as well, lack of green spaces, urban sprawl as well from Philadelphia. Yeah, I think things like transportation probably within Philadelphia are the biggest impacts.
And how do you think people can offset what they do? What habits do you think people can create for themselves to kind of lessen this?
You can literally fight climate change in your own backyard. And one of the ways to do that is to work from the ground up. The most important thing we have on the planet is the planet, and the planet is made of rock and soil and water. So those things, rock's easy to keep clean, but soil and water are a little more difficult. So keeping those clean, making them healthy is super important in yards.
So the number one thing that I always tell people about individual carbon footprint, the biggest decision you can make that's going to have the biggest impact in the shortest amount of time is your diet. And the most important thing is how much meat and dairy products you consume. It's very clear that having a diet heavy in red meats and dairy products is the most carbon and water intensive diet you could have. So
no chemicals, no pesticides, regenerative agriculture, thoughtful 4-season gardening, and in some circles it's called slow living, which is realizing, all right, I don't need the fast thing. I don't have to have the thing that's right in front of me. Moderation is the way to function. And thoughtfulness about where our food comes from, by walking more, by being meditative in their daily life, or taking time to be calm, think about their connection to the planet and each other. Relationship with being frugal and not wasting is really important too, so we're not throwing out food. If we were more in touch with the planet in the United States and more in touch with the dirt, literally touching it, we would be a little calmer, I think, and have a more knowledgeable relationship about how the seasons flow and how life is sustained. And just turn our cars off, friends. That's a huge amount of pollution.
Is there anything you specifically wanted to mention that you think is pertinent to our documentary?
Recognizing that there's no such thing as away when we throw something away is really helpful too. So we all live downstream. It's a closed system. It's a circle. There's no throwing away. There's just throwing somewhere else on the planet. The work that I do has everything to do with regenerative agriculture and the restoration of land and everything that has to do with justice and the oneness of humanity has to do with sustaining the planet.
As said earlier, Delaware County produces over 4.5 million metric tons of CO2 every year. That's a big number, but let's break it down to make it a bit easier to understand. 41% of these come from commercial energy sources such as Marcus Hook, Liberty Electric Power Plant, and Covitana. Switching to green energy sources such as wind, solar, or hydroelectric can reduce the carbon emissions produced by these plants. However, with limited flowing water sources that are able to produce enough energy for Delaware County and unreliable wind patterns for wind turbines, many turn to one of the more expensive forms of energy, solar power, in efforts to offset carbon emissions. When carbon dioxide enters the atmosphere, it traps heat. This comes from CO2 absorbing energy in a range that infrared, sun rays fall inside. When carbon dioxide absorbs that infrared energy, it vibrates and re-emits the energy back in all directions. Half goes back to space and half towards the Earth's surface. This energy comes down to Earth in the form of thermal energy, which generates heat and ultimately increases our temperatures. This process has a wide array of effects on the environment and even human health. Melting ice caps, strong changes in the water cycle, nutrient leaching are just a few of the negative effects we see so commonly in the environment. Warmer temperatures also disrupt Earth's weather patterns, which eventually worsens air quality. Decrease in air quality can lead to respiratory and cardiovascular health effects, such as asthma attacks and heat strokes. These large corporations can cause immense danger to our environment, but how can we help? Switching to solar energy is one of the strongest ways we can reduce the stress put on power plants and consume one of the healthiest forms of energy. However, solar panels are not always the most affordable option. If this change is too expensive, consider the little things in your house. Leaving the Wi-Fi router, TV, and phone chargers plugged in, leaving lights and heaters on are all small ways we use energy without realizing. These common practices can be easily changed. Becoming aware of the amount of energy you consume is one of the most effective steps to solving this issue. We also see cars causing a large percent of annual emissions, so alternative methods of transportation such as walking, public transport, carpooling, and switching to electric vehicles are all viable solutions in the modern world. Buying locally grown food produced by independent farmers, preferably non-meat products, is also a great way to lessen the stress we put on large farms and factories that produce such strong amounts of methane and greenhouse gases in America. Through these simple and mindful efforts, not only can our local community improve its carbon footprint, but we can learn valuable lessons on how to take care of our planet. It is important to treat our environment with care and respect, and always to be mindful of the effects your actions have. This once again has been Carlin and John. Thank you for watching, and remember, what a wonderful world.